My name is Carol Buckley. I'm the founder of Elephant Aid International. So Elephant Aid International is a non-profit NGO, and we work in America. We were founded in 2010 to foster a paradigm shift. This is really important to us. So we want to shift the beliefs and approaches to the care and management of captive-held elephants in Southeast Asia, but not only in Southeast Asia. We want to change the way elephants are cared for all around the world, including in America. We want to approach elephants with respect and recognize that elephant keeping culture has an impact on how elephants are cared for. Elephant Aid works within elephant keeping communities. So when I come into a new country or a new area, I really do try and get to know the people and why they manage elephants the way that they do. And once I understand the culture, then I can provide input on a way to accomplish what they need to accomplish in a way that is better for elephants. So introducing more gentler ways to manage elephants instead of beating them all the time and yelling at them, helping mahouts understand that there is another way and teaching them that other way. So that the goal is improved elephant welfare. And we do that by encouraging the elephant-mahout relationship. So caring for Hati, it's not just about feeding Hati. It's about being aware that that animal has a mind and a body and a soul. And so if we recognize that, then we can better care for the animal. So Hatis are not machines, though they're treated like machines, and I'm sure many of you have seen that great loads of people are put on their back. They're forced to work in the heat all day long because it generates quite a bit of money. But these are living, breathing, feeling wild animals with a high intelligence level. And researchers believe that that intelligence level is about equal to ours. But there's something else beyond intelligence. And elephants are so evolved that they're quite a bit above us in their evolution, all right, in their knowing, being able to coexist within their world. People tend to be the species that doesn't coexist. So we're causing problems, we're breaking things, we're polluting things. You don't see animals doing that unless the animal is forced out of their natural habitat into human populations, and then you see destruction, which in all Asian countries you are seeing human-elephant conflict, human-tiger conflict, and it really is about our behavior and what we're doing, and that we're actually taking away the wild space of these animals and giving the animals no alternative. They have nothing else they can do but end up in a village, and then that becomes a real problem. So Hati is highly evolved, as I just said. They're intelligent. They're incredibly social, much like we are. They have families, they have extended families, they spend a lot of time together. They like to be together. They're also a long-lived animal, which means that they have a very long childhood, much like us. They don't mature till they're around 20. They'll live 70 to 80 years. And they have a well-defined culture, as well-defined as yours. It goes back eons with your religion and with your village life or with your city life. That's culture, and elephants have that as well. And this is something I really like people to understand, is Hati worldwide, living in captivity or living in the wild, is a wild animal. So just because Hati is living in captivity does not make them domesticated. They are indeed not domesticated animals. They are wild animals living in a captive situation. And I want to repeat that. Even Hati that is born in captivity is still a wild animal. Because domestication is a scientific process where you take two individual animals for a trait. Elephants have never been bred for traits, never. So it's been a captive-held female and a wild male. In Nepal, as I just said, it's the captive held female that is bred to a wild bull. Now, how many of you know of the breeding facility in Korsor? At that breeding center, there are only females, but it's still called a breeding center. Usually a breeding center has the females and some males and they breed. Well, in this case, all the females are captive held and they're kept on a chain, and the wild bull comes every day. Now, someone said to me, well, you know, what happens? That bull comes in, he's the father. What if he's breeding his daughter? It doesn't happen. Because the bulls only remain dominant for about 10 years. And so in that time, there would not be a female that was mature enough to breed to. So nature is so smart, and nature fixes it so that there's no inbreeding. So elephant society is very impressive, and we could learn a lot from it. And this is an example in this photograph. These are captive held elephants. They live at the NTNC, National Trust for Nature Conservation in Sohra. And that is Mama, that's Mankali. And the little teeny baby is Hemgaj, and he was about a year old there. And then his sister, Prakriti Kali, who was 10 years old at the time. So they're all related, but they have two different fathers. Prakriti Kali's father was Romeo. Romeo, and then Hemgaj is Ronaldo. So it's also good. I mean, society is fabulous, and this is it. They're always together. Mom's watching, very calmly watching over her kids while they're napping. Females live in matriarchal herds. This is the natural way that it works. The females stay together. When a female baby elephant is born, she stays with her mother's family her entire life. She never leaves. Little boy elephants, on the other hand, they do leave. So the young males, when they reach about 10 years old, they start doing mock fighting and mock breeding. It's normal for them to do that. They're learning to be a male, but they're not going to be full grown until they're 20 years old. So the females actually push them out of the family and make them leave. They're not happy about it. They don't want to leave. They don't know what to do. But what happens is they then go look for other elephants. And since they're highly social creatures, they're looking to be with other elephants. And what they find are groups of little boys around their age. Other little boys that got shoved out of their families. So they all get together in a group. And now they get to know each other. And they get to play fight and do all the things that they need to do to build big muscles and think that they're tough. And they grow up in these different bachelor groups. They're getting to know every male elephant that they will ever meet when they're an adult. And this is important because male elephants go into must. Okay, must is a season that a bull elephant goes into when his testosterone level shoots way up high. He breeds year round, but when he's in must, he's driven to breed. That's all he's going to do. And that testosterone makes him very irritable, gives him a giant headache. He has like a migraine headache from that. And so you don't want to be around him because he's not pleasant, because he's not happy, and he's really aggressive if you try and control him. So with a wild elephant, what happens is the other male elephants stay away from him. In captivity, you can imagine how horrible it is for male elephants. They come into must annually. They can stay in must like 4 months, 5 months. And not only are they irritable and they have this headache, noise hurts their head. Any disruption, any activity just is so uncomfortable for them. So when these elephants remain in their hatisars with all that activity going on and all those people and all the noise, it's very, very hard on them and very dangerous for the mahouts. And when they're 20 years old, they reach maturity. And they will then leave those little bachelor herds and live a semi-solitary life. Usually, an adult bull does not allow a juvenile bull to be with him, but they will allow them to shadow behind. So the bull acts like he doesn't know there's like 5 little young boys back there watching him, copying him, doing everything that he does. The bull pretends he doesn't notice, but he knows what he's doing. He's helping to shape culture. He's teaching those little boys how to be a bull elephant. Okay, Hati, in my opinion and experience, is really no different from us. They need autonomy. Autonomy means to make your own choices. In captivity, elephants never get to make their own choices. They're on a chain. They're told when to eat, where to be, who to be with. Then they go to work. They get to make none of their own choices. And as an adult, elephants are as mature as we are. So as an adult, that's very, very hard on them to never have autonomy. The opposite is when they do have autonomy, they become quite healthy. So they need to be in control of their own body and their own actions. But unfortunately, many elephants live in chains. Now, to remain healthy, Hati must have time when they are not restrained and they are not being controlled by a mahout. Being restrained is physical control. Having a mahout is mental and emotional control. So they need to have the freedom to just be who they are. Across Southeast Asia, elephants are chained. It's a real simple situation. There's not enough land, or land is expensive. The easiest way to keep an animal in one spot is to tie them or to chain them. It's the same with a chicken or a water buffalo or a goat. You chain them or put a rope on them and tie them to a spot. They're going to stay there. So this happens everywhere all over Asia and in America as well. And so there's different ways of chaining. So on the right-hand side is classic Nepal way to restrain. Around both wrists, tied together, peg it to the ground. That allows the elephant to turn around, but not to go very far. The other image on the left is one front leg chained, one back leg chained, and that allows the elephant to rock back and forth, but they can't even turn around. They can lie down in that position, but it's being restrained like that, but it's not comfortable. So chaining their feet together, in addition to the fact that you restrain them and they have no freedom and no autonomy, you are creating a situation that could be very detrimental to their joints to prevent bone, joint, and muscle proper development. And the reason is that a baby elephant will grow 10 inches in height every year for 5 years. So if you think about 10 inches, so that's nearly 1 inch a month that this baby is growing. So if you stand and watch that baby, you could probably see her growing because it's so fast. So this baby is growing fast, and now we're going to chain the baby and we're going to restrict the movement, so we are going to negatively impact the growth, the health of that baby because of the growth. When you chain during these years, I think the easiest way to make the example is when you chain with two legs together like this, you've now changed the structure of the elephant. Elephant is designed like this, columns. The bones are stacked one on top of the other for a reason. They weigh 8,000 pounds when they're full grown. This gives them stability, straight down from the shoulder. When you chain them, this is what happens. You pull their legs together. Now you have really impacted not only the growth, because when you're like this, the tendons and the bones and everything are stretched out longer. They're growing longer. And then what happens to the inside? It's shorter. All right? So then when they have to walk, they're out of alignment completely and they have no strength. So after 20 years, 25 years, they develop arthritis and all other complications. So it misaligns the bones, and it's not a good idea. So as I said, it makes their whole structure weak. This, only when unchained can elephants stand normally with the equal distance between their shoulders, their elbows, and the wrists. And indeed, with elephants, it is a shoulder, it's an elbow, it's a wrist, and on the back legs, the same. It's the hip, the knee, and the ankle, which is unlike other animals, but it's like human. So the practice of isolating, which not allowing elephants to be with other elephants, and chaining them is incredibly harmful. It causes stress and stereotypic behavior. So this is an example of stereotypic behavior. This is a very stressed elephant because not only is she doing the repetitive movement, which is stereotypical, she is also standing with all 4 feet together straight underneath her. She's very stressed. Now when this elephant received her chain-free corral and went into her corral and there was another elephant, she was fine. It's because she's so insecure. Female elephants especially need to be with other elephants or they're afraid. They just don't feel safe. This is a little male. He's in Bagmara. Now his stereotypic behavior is head up and down, but he's doing something else that is the stereotypic behavior. Watch closely, and if you see a repetitive movement. Anybody see it? Speak up. Hind leg. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, he lifts the leg. 1, 2, 3, 4, he'll lift the leg. Stereotypic behavior. Now the thing about stereotypies is that the reason anybody does it is not just elephants that do it, but mostly someone who is confined will do it. It's when you get into the repetitive motion, riding a bicycle, dancing, doing this, bobbing up and down, it creates endorphins, and endorphins make us feel good. So once you get those endorphins, if the situation hasn't changed and the stress has not stopped, you want more endorphins. So that's when this little male added the back leg. He pumped it up. So he's getting a certain amount of endorphins when he's doing this. It's not enough now. He adds the foot, he gets more. And then they get addicted to it. So then all they're doing is a stereotypy. So chain-free corrals, I don't know if any of you had heard about these. Chain-free corrals and why? Well, obviously is to get elephants off of those chains, to give them the physical freedom, which will improve their health and well-being. While they're in a chain-free situation, which simply means they're not confined, they're not tied up, they're not controlled by their mahout to stand in one place, they're allowed to engage in natural activities, which is important for their welfare. So, such as dusting, simple thing, scratching on trees, exploring, playing, napping, and releasing stored body heat. So I want to show you this. This little guy was in Kasara. He just was released into a chain-free corral. And for the first time in 10 years, he got to scratch every inch of his body. And you can see, he is into this. And that's the mahout. And wow, my elephant is really scratching. So the idea of depriving the elephant of something so simple as to scratch an itch. And they do get ticks, and they feel the ticks, but they're able to scratch on a tree. Not only can they get the ticks off of them and relieve the itching, it's very important for the health of their skin, because their skin flakes off just like ours. They get new skin all the time. And so they go into, he had just come out of the water, so they go into the water, that soaks the dead skin. He goes over to a tree, he rubs that hard on a tree, you know he's going to rub all that dead skin off, and then his skin can breathe and he can be somewhat healthy. These are two young elephants, captive-born elephants in Thailand. And about halfway through this video, you may hear a noise. The mahout is going to say something. He's going to say it in Thai. If you're looking closely, you're going to see the behavior of the elephants change. So here, these two little elephants are given the physical freedom to play, and play is so important because that's socializing. But we have to make sure that we don't insert ourselves, always controlling everything about them. We're always controlling them. So in this case, it's a little male and a female. And the male is 1 month younger than the female. And the female is a pushy little elephant. She just is. It's who she is. And she's always picking on the little boy. So in this situation here, the little interaction that they're having is fairly even. It's equal. So they're equally pushing each other. And at one point, the little male is sort of at an advantage. So he's like a little bit more on the female. So he's kind of winning this little contest. And the moment he starts to win the contest, the mahout from the female tells him to stop, because he wants his elephant to win. So the minute he says to the little male, stop that, he stops, because the mahout's there and he could get in trouble. And as soon as that little male stops, the female takes advantage and she shoves him around and kicks him, and Again, human intervention. Just let the elephants interact with each other, learn what it is to be an elephant. The intervention of the human is incredibly powerful, and it has an impact. Okay, so something that is really important for anyone who's going to be caring for elephants, either as a mahout, an owner, a veterinarian, a vet tech, is to know that heat kills hati. So according to a study that was published, 4 hours of exercise in the sun can cause overheating in an elephant and can be fatal. This photograph shows you downtown Sohra, where elephants that do rides every day walk on hot pavement in the sun with their mahouts driving them quickly to the ride area. If it is over 23 degrees Celsius, the elephant is not releasing body heat at that time. They're absorbing it, and they're holding it in their core. Now, there's a purpose for that, is they hold it in their core, and then at nighttime when it cools down, they consciously release that heat that keeps them warm. 23 degrees Celsius or higher, the elephant can't release their body heat. They can release it, but they don't release it, and they retain 56 to 100% of the heat that they're taking in, which of course can result in overheating and even death if they are not given a way to release that body heat. So elephants cool their bodies and release the heat in 4 different ways. Now, they don't perspire the way we do, so they can't sweat and that cool them. That doesn't happen. They sweat around their cuticles and inside their trunk. That's it. So they have to have these other mechanisms to cool their body. 1 is flapping their ears, 2 is dusting, 3 is standing in the shade, and the 4th is submerging or using water. Flapping their ears is pretty incredible. Their ears almost work like a radiator. So those big veins, you see few big veins there. That elephant is not hot. If that elephant was hot, every single little line and every line you don't see in there, there would probably be 30 veins that were sticking up as big as that one big one there. So the blood is circulating through those veins. The elephant flaps their ears a little bit. That results in the cooling of the temperature of the blood that's in those veins, and then that cooled blood circulates into their body and cools them down. So if they need to be cooler, they throw water on the back of their ears and on their neck, and that then cools even more. So ears are, of course, so important. Asian elephants have smaller ears because in reality, in the wild, Asian elephants live in shaded areas. So during the day, an Asian elephant doesn't want to be out in the sun. She wants to be in the trees. So she's protected. And that's why she evolved with smaller ears compared to an African who has giant ears because they're always out in the sun and they needed a larger cooling system. Another way to cool their body is dusting, and what that does is it actually creates insulation, protects them from the sun, also protects them from biting insects, and protects them from getting a sunburn. And then they can hang out in the woods and cool down that way. This is a young male this is his first moments in his chain-free corral. He lived in Bagmara inside the national park, and he spent a little time standing in the shade, but most time he spent exploring. And if you didn't know it, you'd think he's a wild elephant, huh? Because he is. He's a wild elephant living in captivity. So these are, the different ways that they can release that body heat. And of course, the 4th way is to get wet. So if they stand in the water, just like, I don't know if you know this, if you run cold water right here on your wrist, that actually will cool you down. You don't have to get your whole body wet. That'll cool you down. Obviously, mama elephant knows that. She's standing in this little puddle. And the baby, of course, is going to get in the water and roll around because that baby is much more active. Therefore, the baby builds up more body heat and needs to actually get into the water. All right, so foot health is one of my focuses because I can do foot care for elephants that are living in captivity. And foot health is paramount for captive-held elephants because, of course, their feet are their foundation. damaged and diseased feet and nails, foot pads. When I say feet, I'm talking about the bottom of the elephant's foot. It's called a foot pad, and it is continually growing. It's not like ours. It just continually grows, and the nails as well continue to grow. So when those are damaged, it causes pain, suffering, and it can even cause death. So here's a few photographs. Without proper trimming, foot pads and nails become overgrown. They split, they crack, they rot. They are seriously painful when they're like that. On the left-hand side top photo, you see a young elephant. That's Prakriti Kali. She, in this picture, was probably about 8, 9 years old. That's called a baby's foot. You can tell that's a baby. The wetness around the top of her toes is her perspiring. Okay, so they only sweat around the top of their toes at their cuticles. The cuticles have sweat glands. Another reason why their feet have to remain healthy and the cuticles should not get overgrown, because if the cuticles get overgrown and hard, they have difficulty sweating. So when you see an elephant sweating like that, that's a good sign. You know that they're healthy and they're getting rid of some of that heat that way. Below, the second picture shows an example of good pads. And when I say good pads, there must be traction like the bottom of your tennis shoe. Because when you're wearing a shoe that has no traction and you walk through water on concrete, what happens? You slip. You slip and sometimes fall. Same with an elephant. So if their foot was flat with no traction, then they wouldn't keep a good footing because they're going on in water, on mud, they're climbing up and down hills. They have to have traction. The bottom photo also shows you there's different types of traction. So some look like the track on the bottom of our shoe, and other looks like a pitted traction. Anyway, it needs not to be smooth. On the right-hand side, you see a good example of what I see in Sohra with the privately owned elephants every time I come here. Rotten feet, overgrown, disease, split nails, cracked pads, a wreck. Their feet are a wreck. And that is incredibly painful. It can cripple them, and they're still doing elephant rides. This is the ultimate disease which will happen when you neglect elephant feet, and it's called osteomyelitis. Osteomyelitis is a disease that any mammal can get. It's where a bacteria infection reaches a bone and infects the bone. So in this case with this elephant's name is Callie. She lived at the San Francisco Zoo, so in the USA. And this shows that the bones rotted to the point that her feet are going to collapse. So after I took this picture, not 2 days later, she's standing on exhibit in a zoo. The bones deteriorated, her foot collapsed, and she was actually standing on her wrist. The whole thing just collapsed, and now she's standing on this bone. Of course, she can't stand, she can't walk, she's in excruciating pain. So in our country, what we do is we euthanize. So she was killed because of poor care in the past. So here's an example of a great little elephant. His name is, Binu Chaudhry is the Maut. And what is this little elephant's name? Anyway, he's fabulous, captive born. Yeah, he's about 10 years old. And his Mahout has taken such, well, I'll tell you here. He is one of twins born in captivity here in Nepal. His Mahout, Binu Chaudhry, takes very, very good care of him. As you see here, he has near perfect pads. Not flat, kind of bowl shape, high in the center. That's how you want it. He has really good tracking on his pad, supple. His nails are a good length. So all we're going to do is we're going to take off just a little bit of the excess here, but otherwise his feet are perfect. The reason you take this off is so that he doesn't put undue pressure on the end and split the nail. When he's walking through grass, he'll wear that down naturally too. bevel this edge right here so it's smooth. So he doesn't catch it on anything and tear the nail. In the wild, or even as he goes through his daily duty, when he's walking through the grass, he'll wear this down. Also, when he picks grass, he'll strike it with his toes. That smooths his nail down and keeps inside here clear. My trimming partner is named Kitten, and he always thinks that we will melt if it rains. It's starting to rain, and so you hear him in the background going, Carol! And you notice how calm that elephant is? It doesn't hurt. He's happy as he can be. He has a little bit of bruise right here. It's because this nail was just a little bit long. Anyway, I'm going to move through this. But anyway, that elephant shows you that the relationship between the mahouta and the elephant is fabulous. The elephant feels safe. He's not afraid of having his feet done. It doesn't hurt to have your feet trimmed if it's done properly. And Lakshmi Gaj is his name. He's had his feet done multiple times, not only by me, but by his mahouta as well. So workload, of course, is another issue for elephants, for captive-held elephants. And the real problem is that by nature, Hathi is not designed to carry a load on top of their back. That's not how nature designed them. Their structure is designed to carry weight below, so below their spine. And in this picture, you can see the mass of their body that is hanging from their spine. So they're designed for that. And when you go and put a heavy howdah that's not built properly, that actually sits on their shoulder blades and their spine, and then you put a bunch of people up there, you actually damage the tissue on their spine, which causes abscessing, and in many cases will kill elephants, because that abscess will then go subcutaneous underneath and all along the spine, and that infection will spread all along the spine before you even know that it's there. So this is Kitten, my co-worker here. He's a Nepali vet tech, now works for NTNC, National Trust for Nature Conservation. He's a fabulous healer. So the howdah and the pad cause wounds along the elephant's spine and the rib cage, which requires lancing and antibiotics. And in these two photos, that's what you see Kitten doing, is he has lanced this wound, because you have to get the pus out, and you have to get every single particle of that pus out. If you do not, it just grows rapidly. So you've got to flush it really, really good, make sure it's really clean. And then what Kitten is doing is taking gauze, putting it in iodine, and then feeding the gauze into the wound. So filling the entire wound with the gauze, and then he'll leave it in there, and that'll help it to heal from the inside out. You don't stitch it. With the elephants, they have to heal from the inside out. It's a long process, takes a long time for them to heal, and it's incredibly painful for them. Another problem with the saddle is there is a strap that goes underneath the tail that attaches the back of the saddle. And as you see in that picture on the left, you see how that rope is pulling up on that very, very tender tissue underneath the tail. And then in the right-hand picture, you see what happens. The rope just cuts that tissue. So one of the things we suggested is rubber hose, like a water hose. Put that over the rope that goes underneath their tail. Grease it up really good so it can slide and not cut them. So that seems to work. But it takes months and months for those wounds to heal. And this is the other place where elephants are injured, and you will see this in every elephant that is living in captivity in Nepal and in most other Asian countries, is across the forehead. So you'll see in the right-hand picture, you see the results of beating an elephant over the head. So it isn't out of maliciousness that they do it. It's ignorance, not knowing that the damage that's being done. But in the end, what happens is not only is there psychological damage that is done to the elephant, but there's the physical scarring. So the left-hand picture, that light color, that's all scar. That's all scar from scabs, the scab falling off. And then you see this. You'll see elephants that have what looks like a cap. There's a line across their forehead, and it's really, really dark, much darker than their skin. That's where the mahout oils the elephant's head. And they oil the head so the scabs don't look so bad. So it is my experience that Hathi does not need to be abused to obey. And for those of us who know that, then it's our job to teach others that there are other ways to manage elephants. Developing a respectful relationship is key. So with the mahout, meeting the Hathi's needs, having a respectful relationship, will get very, very good results. We know this with anyone. Someone is your friend. You're gonna do things for each other. You're gonna take care of each other. And also, if you mess up, your friend's not going to be too mad at you about it. You know, you're friends. Well, that's the same thing with a mahout and with a Hathi, is they need to become friends and respect each other and work with each other. And then the mahout can trust the Hathi much, much more. Because Hathi is going to like his mahout. He's not going to do bad things to the mahout, and it makes it a much better situation all the way around. And we do try and teach the mahouts that a sign of a superior mahout, someone who's really good, is a mahout who, with a whisper, gently talk to an elephant, hardly when anyone else can hear. And patience can get the elephant to do anything. So thanks to the Department of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation, there was an initiative done, and Chief Warden Kamel Kunwar in 2016 worked with Elephant Aid International to create chain-free corrals in order to get their 53 elephants off chains. So we built 53 chain-free corrals, solar powered. We built them inside the national park. We built them in Korsor, in Sohra, in Kasura. You see the whole list of where we built these corrals, and they were a minimum size of 1 acre, maximum size of 4 acres. So all the corrals and all the Hathis that went chain-free. And it was so successful. You're putting elephants into something that is natural for them. They feel it. They know it. Oh, I can do this. But it's getting the people to understand and accept this is a good thing for elephants. But it was successful. Everybody was on board. It was great. But, unfortunately, we had heavy rains and we had wild elephants. So what happened is the corrals fell into disrepair. Now not one corral is functioning. Not one. All of these elephants were put back on chains. So it's time to get to the drawing board again and say, okay, how can we make this work? We know the system works, but management has to take an interest and want to maintain. If they're not going to maintain the corrals, then we might as well not build them. So instead of improved elephant welfare becoming the priority, Nepal's hardworking anti-poaching patrol elephants have been put back on chains. But we trust that the next generation of Nepali youth, which is all of you sitting here, will be the ones to create the change. So Hathi captured from the wild, bred in captivity, separated from family, and forced to work for man, experiences trauma which negatively impacts their ability to fight off disease, resulting in a life of long suffering and premature death. So Hathis are the embodiment of Ganesh. We all know this. Anytime I see any elephants walking past people, you know, everybody wants to be blessed by Ganesh. And then I say, look at this elephant has sores all over them and they're suffering. So let's do something for the embodiment of Ganesh. They deserve respect, good care, understanding, and they deserve freedom. Study the species, know the species, and then you can apply it to the captive. So if you really care about elephants, learn who they are in the wild, and then look at how we keep them here. And then you'll know the changes that need to be made.